Hello, welcome to PCR TV at PCR. I'm Pathak from Toulouse, France, and really delighted to have David Kandzari from Atlanta with us. Hello,
Great
David.
To be with you. Thank you, Atul.
David, you are the lead author and the principal investigator of a trial called the SPYRAL-ON trial, which was an amazing trial presented at the meeting and published simultaneously on the Lancet. So, for the audience, where are we standing before this SPYRAL-ON trial?
That's exactly right, Atul. It's been, just as you described, an enthusiastic and exciting week here at EuroPCR with the presentation of these results. The SPYRAL-ON Meds clinical trial was a randomized sham-controlled international study, and it was the second part of two parallel phase trials. The off-med study, which was presented and published last year, that was a study of renal denervation therapy for uncontrolled hypertension, but in the context of no antihypertensive medication. So it was really showing the biologic proof of principle, the biologic efficacy of renal denervation therapy. And now it's been followed by our presentation with the SPYRAL-ON Meds study. This was an international randomized sham-controlled trial in which 80 patients were randomized to either renal denervation or sham control, but in comparison to the off-med study, these patients were taking 1 to 3 of commonly prescribed antihypertensive medications, but still had persistent uncontrolled hypertension. The study showed that not only consistent with the previous studies that renal denervation therapy was safe, but it also demonstrated quite significant and quite clinically relevant reductions in all blood pressure measures, both office and systolic blood pressure. For example, the 24-hour systolic blood pressure over 6 months was reduced 9 millimeters mercury compared with only 1.6 millimeters mercury in the sham control group.
So a trial really changing our vision about the therapy and the way we can treat these hypertensive patients. Maybe can you just share with us your thought about how would you apply the results of this trial in your practice?
That's a terrific question. So the first issue, as you know well, is we need to get these devices approved and this technology really adopted into clinical practice with continued studies that will continue to endorse the safety and the efficacy, the promise of renal denervation therapy for what really is the world's leading cause of death and disability, hypertension. At present, we're performing a large international trial, a randomized study in the off-meds population as a pivotal study. This study is being in part conducted in the United States as a pivotal trial with the Food and Drug Administration oversight, but of course it's an international trial that will hopefully inform clinical practice but also confirm the safety and efficacy of renal denervation therapy. And then in addition, we're presently in discussions for the design and conduct of a large confirmatory trial in the on-med setting. And I think it's this latter setting in the setting of medications, that will be more representative of clinical practice in which you and I and hopefully many other healthcare providers will think about integrating pharmaceutical therapy along with integrating device therapy for the treatment of uncontrolled hypertension. But some of the insights that we have from these data that we've shared here in Paris have been that renal denervation in a very promising way completely suppresses the blood pressure at all time intervals in comparison to the sham control group. And I think this has important implications relative to medications that have pharmaceutical peaks and troughs and therefore limitations in control of blood pressure. We can also talk about adherence in both the real world and clinical practice with regard to patients' willingness or interest in taking their medications. And the latter issue is that the persistent always-on effect of renal denervation may have important implications, especially for individuals who are at very high risk for cardiovascular events, such as those individuals with nocturnal hypertension or early morning hypertension. So I think there's so much more to come, and it's going to be an exciting time for you and I and many others.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.